multi-platform content at Black Enterprise, Selena Hill.
Hello, everyone. How's everyone feeling? That was moving, right? Really powerful. Well, I'm super excited to have this talk back conversation. Let's welcome to the stage writer and director Walter Thompson-Hernández. Let's also welcome Oscar, Emmy, and Tony nominated actress Danielle Brooks. Come on, Deltas. Delta's in the building. There's a lot of love in here, too. Oh, there's a lot of love in here. So, If I Go, Will They See Me is such a powerful, gripping film that really tells the story of a complicated relationship between a father and a son. And it also shows the nuance that sometimes exists between working class Black fathers and their children. Danielle, I want to start with you. What was it about this film that made you want to be part of it? And what was it about your character, Lozita? Didn't she play a great job as Lozita? Lo, such a great job. Oh, the acting was so brilliant. What was it about Lozita and this film that drew you to it?
Well, thank you first for having me. I'm very excited. This is my first time on the Vineyard. Yes.
We love a newbie.
I am a newbie.
Yes.
I have to say, every time I watch this, because I love to be in the audience with you all, I am so emotional. And I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to be able to do the panel because it's such a reflection. All I can do is reflect and think, and I just want to sit with the film. But to answer your question, why? It was first the script. I knew that there was something there. I knew that I was being given an opportunity to really showcase the truth of who we are as people. I think sometimes we're not scared, but sometimes we can get tired of the narrative of seeing people in the hood and people in jail and all of those things that might make us look in a negative light. But there is so much more to the person, to the being, and that excited me. And so I said yes. And then I met, well, in my head, because you didn't know that yet. And then I met Walter. We sat down in LA and had a long conversation over, I don't know, biscuits and some coffee. We talked, and I was just so intrigued with his passion for this story, how connected he was to these people, and they're real. Like, there was a real Lozita, as you saw at the end, the dedication to her. And he expressed that to me. He said, you know, she passed away. And I was devastated because I was like, man, first of all, hearing that she passed away from cancer.
I'm sorry, who passed away?
Lozita. There's a real Lozita, yes, that was living. And Walter was friends with her. And I was looking forward to meeting her, but I wasn't, given that opportunity. And so then I was like, oh, wow, this is an opportunity to honor her, to honor those that have come before, and that don't always get their stories told. And how can I do that? And so he was so gracious to give me a bunch of photos to reflect on, which is one of my favorite ways to lean into a character, and in this way, a real person. And so I got to just dissect them. I got to, when I looked at her hair, how her hair was, how she interacted with her children, how she held her mouth, which tells me just so much about if she's quiet or not, is she expressive, the tattoos on her body. There was just so many things that told me so much about her. And so I just was excited to play something that was completely different than people have seen me do. You know, I'm mostly playing bold, vivacious, big women characters that are just full of life. But to play someone a little bit more quiet that has so much stirring inside was really exciting. So thank you, Walter. And I also just, you are just one bad MF, man.
Yes.
You really are. Like, every time, there's not many times I can watch a film, and every time I watch it, I'm so captivated. I am. You just did a beautiful job of showing the human experience. And I thank you for that, to be able to tell stories like that. That's all I ever wanted to do as an actor. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
That is beautiful. Do we have a tissue for Danielle? Danielle, can we please get Danielle a tissue? Don't get these. Walter, you know, Danielle is not the only one who's teared up watching this film and got emotional. I know just the rawness and the authenticity that's portrayed in the film, it definitely hit me as well. What inspired you to tell this story? We know you have a deep connection to this neighborhood, to this community. Talk about that and your inspiration.
Absolutely. Well, first, I just want to say this movie, it first showed at Sundance, and I've been traveling with this movie like everywhere, right? Like Asia, Europe, all over the U.S. This is probably like the most beautiful audience and like the safest I feel like talking about this movie, like for real, man. It feels like, yeah, it feels so good to be here. It feels so special, so beautiful. The inspiration comes from so many different places, right? Like I grew up under the LAX flight path, and for like so many of us, you know, there's like a total of 800 airplanes that fly towards LAX every single day, right? And for me, it's like when I was a child, we used to kind of make up these mythologies, right, about the airplanes, about where they were going, where they were coming from, and sort of began to associate that with so many different things, right? Flight as ascension, flight as departure, flight as like a way to understand maturation, flight as a way to understand how boys sometimes turn into men too fast, right? So the inspiration is personal, but the sort of like mythology exists long before me, right? You know, this idea that like Black folks like, you know, use flight for freedom and manumission, but also flight can also destroy us, and flight can kill us, and flight can harm us, right? So I'm really playing with those two sort of ideas, how flight can be beautiful, but also dangerous. And this boy is kind of experiencing that. You know, he's attracted to flight because it's literally in the air, but it can also destroy and damage him.
Yeah, and we definitely saw a lot of that nuance and the complexity of that. Danielle, I want to take it back to something that you just said about you playing Lozita. I feel like when we see the quote-unquote typical strong Black woman, we've seen it before, but you brought so much depth and dimension to Lo. She was a mother raising 3 children while her partner was in and out of prison. What was your approach? We know that you had a personal connection to Lo, obviously through Walter. How did you approach this role so that it doesn't feel stereotypical and it allowed her as a person, like her character was louder than her circumstance?
Great question. Loaded question. Well, I really just try to be as honest as I can in my work, and I think Walter gave us a lot of space to do so. Obviously, as an actor, you come in, you know, have done your own research and work, but we worked very tightly with J.L. Fonz, who's just amazing in this. And, you know, we shared a lot. I don't even want to say we overshared. I think we had a safe space for all 3 of us to just be vulnerable about experiences that we've had personally. And I think because of that, Walter gave us the space with improv, you know, to say what we were feeling the character would say and do. And so that's what you got. And I think that was such a cool approach to it, because you're able to find things that you might not normally do with what's on the page, you know? And so that's what you get, you know? And moments that I'm speaking of are like the moment with my son when I'm walking and I'm saying I'm sorry. You know, that was a moment of reflection, of improv. Oh man, there was so many. Oh God. I'm blanking.
Like with Breezy, like in the
With
back.
Breezy, yeah, in the bathroom smoking. That's where it's improv, you know. It was a lot of that, even in the quiet moments, you know, not always even in the words. So yeah, I just love
And
that approach.
That moment with Little Ant where you apologize, I felt that. I feel like so many Black mothers want to
many.
protect their children and even will put themselves on the line.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you said that was improv, because that felt very real. And another realization, or another thing that felt very authentic, was the father, right? He loved his son, he loved his family, but he was complicated. And he had a past, he had a history, and he didn't always know how to show up. On one end, we could say, you know, he checks a lot of stereotypical boxes. At one point, it felt like abusive. But you were able, Walter, to show all the complexities of this man. Why was it so important for you to show him in all these lights? Like, we saw that one scene where he was coming out of church with his mother-in-law. And so it was like, oh, okay. And we saw the love, but then we saw sort of him building up inside and showing that aggression.
100%. You know, I think like so many of the men that I knew growing up were versions of Big Ant, right? Like so many of the men in my neighborhood and in my family were sort of men who would sometimes just disappear for years, right? For months, for days, for weeks, for years, and sometimes come back and sometimes they wouldn't. And there was sort of like, there were questions, but there were never answers about what they were doing. Were they incarcerated? Did they have other families? Were they hustling, right? Whatever it was, right? So for me, I kind of grew up with these men, and I also saw these men, and they were soft, and they were tender, and they were, you know, loving in their sort of ways, right? So I understood that, like, the way that I saw like masculinity as a child was different versions of it. You know, it wasn't black or white. It was mostly gray, and it was nuanced, and I just saw these like complicated men who were once, you know, boys, right? They were all boys at one point who maybe grew up too fast. So I thought about that, and I also just think about like, I mean, for me, this movie's about grace, right? Like the word grace for me is so deeply woven into what this movie is, like redemption, grace, hope, right? And really thinking about like, is Big Ant's character, is he worthy of redemption, right? Is he a monster, or is he doing monstrous things, right? And I don't think he's a monster. I think very few people are monsters, right? So yeah, like I'm just trying to understand that. I think, you know, now as an adult, like I've had time to reflect on these men growing up, and I really saw Big Ant in that.
Yeah, and with Big Ant having his history being incarcerated, right, working class community, I feel like when that happens in communities of color, it causes that separation and distance, causes complicated relationships with their children. But I felt like this film plays a role in that healing process, right? It didn't feel like just like a movie you'd watch, right, and go about your business. It felt like something you reflect upon and something that hits you at your core. What role does this film play in healing those broken relationships we often see in communities of color between fathers and sons?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question, and you know, it's a question that's kind of hard to answer, right? It's hard to answer for me because I think the onus and the weight and the responsibility, you know, it lies on so many different things, right? I'm hoping, right? Like, it is my hope. I can't predict the future. I don't know how people feel when they watch. But it is my hope, right? Like, it's my hope that there's something in this movie that allows us to extend more grace for each other, right? That allows us to find restorative ways to love and heal with one another. Because sometimes we don't have to always, right? But at times we have to continue to live with the people who have harmed us, right? And so what does it look like, you know, to have a family member or a relative or a close friend who we know is better than their worst action, right? And I think Big Ant is that.
He is that. Danielle, I want to get your thoughts too, because it does evoke a lot of emotion for us. I sometimes feel like tears are healing.
Oh, for sure.
Cleansing.
They're telling you something.
What do you want this? How do you want this film to be portrayed, and can it heal in a way?
I definitely think that's it's healing. I think that's the beauty of art. It does heal people. I think what I love about this film is that it makes you slow down. You know, he has really taken his time with telling the story. And I think that's intentional, obviously, but that's the same with reflection. There's so many mirrors in this film. And the placement of when the mirrors show up are intentional. And what I was thinking about this time while watching it, because every time is something different, but it was how many times are we going to ignore the reflection that we see?
That's deep.
And so that's just what kept coming to my mind. How many times are we going to ignore it? And I don't know exactly how this is going to move people and affect people, but I pray that it does. You know, I pray that it does. I pray that people do exactly what this artist wanted them to do, is slow down, take a second and reflect on yourself, you know, and what decision that you need to make. And the most powerful thing, and I think that's the thing that messes me up and gets me so emotional, is the responsibility that we have to one another as human beings. But more than that is the responsibility that we have to these babies, to the next generation. Everything that we do, y'all, they see it, they feel it. The way that you so crafted, so specially, whatever the heck word I'm trying to say, so specifically crafted little Ant listening to his parents have sex. Little Ant hearing his parents fight. It's every little thing that we do, y'all. We soak it up, and not even on the kids, with each other. With each other. We have that responsibility. And so I just pray that people really take that time to understand how we affect each other. You know, like Tabitha Brown say, if you can't make, what she say, y'all know, about making nobody else's day, don't mess up anybody else's day. Y'all don't know what Tabitha Brown be saying? What is it? Messing up anybody else's day.
That's it right there.
You know, and that's what I feel. I feel that power, you know, I just feel that so powerfully inside me. That was the message that came to me today. But it for everyone, it's going to be so different.
It did. And I feel like, based on what you were saying, it felt like Ant wasn't just being raised by his parents. It felt like he had community around him, right?
You watching boxing,
right?
You know, he's seeing them fight in the backyard, and so he starts doing it. Then he actually gets in a fight, you know.
Yeah, everything, especially young people, our children, because they do soak everything in. And another really powerful scene for me was when Big Ant's best friend stood up to him and said, "No, that's not right. This is not some dude in the street. This is your son." And he scolded him in that moment. And then in another scene, he said, "You don't need to be afraid. Accept this. Accept that little Ant sees you as a God. Accept that he looks up to you." What was that internal struggle that you were trying to portray that Big Ant had?
I mean, I think I was really trying to create a lot of sort of interiority, right? And trying to understand, I mean, because there's a lot there, right? I think on the surface, you kind of ask the question, well, why isn't this dad sort of accepting that his son sees him such a beautiful way, right? Like, intuitively, I think most fathers would kind of appreciate that, right? But I think what that does is kind of remind this character, right? It reminds Big Ant that his son is essentially a mirror, and his son is telling him that he is not performing, right? That he is not, acting like the father that he needs him to be. And I think what that does for a character, what that does for a human, it forces you to act in sometimes aggressive, sort of violent ways, right? Where it's like, wow, my son is telling me that I need to do better, and I'm not doing better, right? So I think the whole, sort of using Greek mythology for me, right, is important here. I think we're all kind of 12 years old growing up in LA. We all sort of start to learn about Greek mythology, right? And like, what better sort of way to understand complex characters than Greek mythology, right? So it's like this boy, right, who is so smart, he's making these beautiful connections. He's saying Poseidon, I know Poseidon, that's my dad. I know Medusa, that's my mom. Like, these are such beautiful connections that he's making. And he's also telling us like how he sees his family, right? Such a beautiful way. And sometimes, like, the family that we have can't take that, right? They don't know what to do with that. And I think Big Ant didn't know what to do.
For me, and I'm glad you explained that internal struggle that we saw a Big Ant going through, it felt so relatable because I think a lot of us, and you talked about this, Danielle, don't want to face the person in the mirror. And Little Ant made him confront himself, even down to that first incident that changed his life when he took the brick and he hit the janitor and he was running from himself, right? And how many times do we run from ourselves? We run from our past because it's just hard to handle, but he had to face it. And another thing you just talked about, Walter, was the Greek mythology. That part, I mean, just talk about why was it so important for that to be another underlying theme in this film, and what was it that allowed Little Ant to express himself through Greek mythology that he probably couldn't really express himself in reality? He had to use these characters to express.
That's right. Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. I think it was easier, sometimes easier for all of us, but I think it was easier for Little Ant to be like, understanding the world through Greek mythology, right? It still feels safe. There's fantasy there. There's like history there. It doesn't really force him to confront what's happening, right? The other part of that, to answer your question, there's a really beautiful book by Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's called Between the World and Me, right? And in the first chapter, there's like a really special moment. I always think about this moment. The first chapter talks about, Ta-Nehisi's obviously writing this book for his son, for his child, right? And he says, he goes like Toni Morrison, James Baldwin, Alice Walker, all these beautiful artists and writers like belong to you, right? He's talking to his son. And he also lists, Simone de Beauvoir, right? Leon Trotsky, like European artists and painters and thinkers, right? And he says, those also belong to you, right? And I always think about that. And I remember the first time I read that, it made me think about, Greek mythology is also ours, right? It's also ours. And I think it's unfortunate that we don't see it more, but like this boy who lives in the projects and Watts, like he's a nerd, right? He loves Greek mythology. Like this is what it is, right? And yeah, I always think about that.
Another thing we saw was that relationship between a black man and a black woman. That black woman just holding her man down, that we could all relate to in some way or another. Danielle, my question for you is, as an actor, how do you build on a character when we don't always see what she's carrying? We felt it in the film, but it was, you brought that to life. We felt what she was carrying. How did you build on that?
Oh man, I think first of all, I just feel so deeply too, and I think that's a gift that God has given me to put in my work, and I think that's the same with J.L. Fonz. Like we're both actors that it's just when I watch like Broadway shows or things that I'm literally watching like this, because like I feel it so much more than I can communicate with words. What was your question? Here we go, Lord Jesus. About the husband and wife relationship and how I feel it so much. Well, that's one. And I'm always trying to be observant of the world that I live in, of what's going on with people in real time. And, hey, I'm a human, I'm a person. Like life gets real, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes I'm able to put what I'm experiencing into my work, and that's not necessarily the exact same scenario, but I know what it's like to hurt. I know what it's like to hold a secret. I know what it's like to feel like I don't feel like this is going to work. I feel like I might need to step away from this. I know what it's like to need to reflect, and so I put myself into the character, and work with my scene partner and my director, and that's how we find it.
I love the turning point in Lo because I didn't see her leaving when she left. I didn't see that coming because she was like, that's my man, I'm sticking by him. And I thought she was gonna hold him down. But that part, I was like, that inner strength that came out at the end. Can you talk about just portraying that side of Lo, which we didn't see initially?
I mean, I feel like, we didn't, but it was there in quiet moments. You feel, right? It was there in quiet moments. I think that she was debating on how to move. The sisters clearly agree with me. she knows she was leaving that man. I was, or she was. She was getting up out of there. She just didn't have a plan. But that's the thing about the reflection. You have to figure it. Sometimes, again, going back to that time thing, you have to map that thing out. You have to, and that's not only with leaving a man, that's in life. We have to map that thing out before we just move. Because again, how we move in life, it affects everybody. And I think that's what Lozita was so careful about. How is this affecting my kids? How can I safely get them out of this? And I love it how you did at the end. And this is something, I don't know when you found this, I'm curious to know, but that moment with Lozita in the mirror when she's in her own place and there's that mirror and she's smoking that cigarette and she's in thought, but that reflection, I just think that was so beautifully placed and so smart.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like it was like the most powerful kind of realization of the whole movie, right? She's alone, she's smoking this cigarette, she's like still in the neighborhood, but she's not in the house anymore, I mean, I don't know, I thought it was like the reflection of the movie.
And we were very intentional about everything, like even that cigarette. We talked about it, and I said I think she would be smoking because she needs to breathe. That's her reasoning, is I just need to breathe. And this is the only thing that is going to allow me to inhale and exhale. So everything was intentional about what we were doing.
It felt very intentional. The whole film was powerful and gripping. What was the most powerful or meaningful parts of the film for you each?
Changes every time I watch it. Every time. I mean, one of my favorite moments is the beginning when you have the beautiful John Batiste, who had worked on the music, playing This Bitter Earth. I just love that with the water, which is just, so symbolic of so many things. And today, I think I can say I became a polar bear today.
Yes.
One and done, baby. One and done.
Come on.
My feet are still cold. It's a real thing. But I say that because even when I was in that water today, thinking about this came up in my head about the ancestors, especially thinking about Lozita, who had passed away, and thinking about, what you were saying about the air, being in a plane and how it can carry you, but also it can hurt you. And that's the same with the water, right? It can carry you, you can float in, and it's a beautiful feeling, and then it can take you out. And I think about how we just have to find a way to ride that wave, and stay afloat. And it was just such a nice reflection to be in the water with 430 some odd women and people, men, and just thinking like, we all have a story. We all are riding our own waves, and trying to get through this thing together as we literally were holding hands at the end. So just a beautiful, experience for me to get to share this story here with you all in this way. So thank you guys for that experience today.
That's beautiful. Walter?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel so, like, I feel so much gratitude for Danielle and for J. Alphonse, who I've loved and respected so much on screen for a lot of years, to be able to kind of bring my first feature into the world. I mean, personally, too, I just feel so lucky, you know, like, I was literally a child looking up in the sky thinking about airplanes, right? And creating mythologies around them, and here we are kind of watching a movie about them. So I just feel so lucky for that, you know?
If the audience had to walk away, well, audiences around the world, once they see this, with just one feeling, one image, or one idea after watching your film, what is it that you hope stays with them?
That's a great question. Also, a really tough question. I mean, I think I kind of said it earlier, right? Like, I feel like the idea of grace for me is like, grace is the most beautiful word in the English language, I believe. And I think it's so deeply woven into this movie in so many different moments, right? And yeah, you know, I just wish that for everybody.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Danielle.
and for me today, it's just responsibility. That's just what is on my heart. We all have a responsibility to ourselves and to one another. So that's what I hope people take.
Amazing. I think for me, if I go, will they miss me? That last scene was so powerful. You talked about grace, you talked about responsibility. We saw both of those elements. Because when Little Ant wrote those words out, I was like, my first thought was, oh my God, is he suicidal? Like, you know, was he thinking about self-harm? And then it looked like he was taking the Greek mythology a little too far, and he thought he could fly. But I was like, then he wrote. So y'all remember the scene when he was on the roof? And then Big Ant's best friend came and saved him, showed him that grace, took that responsibility in a moment where Big Ant was praying and asking for redemption and actually taking accountability. That, to me, was a moment of reflection that spoke volumes and shows that there's always hope. Even when we get it wrong, even when we hurt those that we love most, that extension of grace in those moments when we're at our worst, it just goes so far and it means so much. And I'm so glad that If I Go, Will They Miss Me portrayed that feeling, that level of vulnerability, because we don't always get to talk about that. So thank you. Thank you both. Thank you both.
Selena. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Walter Thompson-Hernández and Danielle Brooks.